everybody. My name is Deanna. I'm newish, so I don't know a lot of you. But I am an anthropologist and an archaeologist. That's what I specialized in, and I specialized in ancient religion because I've always been fascinated by religion, essentially. So I was going to do our presentation kind of on the origins of religion, where we think this first started, where we first start seeing this behavior in human civilization at all. Okay. Now my computer has decided to how are we doing, friend? Okay. That's right. Okay, so all we really have to go on to try to figure out how ancient humans practice religion or spirituality is what they've left behind, and that's not very much. So some of the first things that we get, starting about 65,000 years ago, we start getting cave art. And it starts really primitive originally, where it's like dots and lines, kind of geometric shapes, and then it gets a little more advanced. But for the first, let's see, starting about 65,000 years ago, and then 40 to 50,000 years ago, we start seeing stuff like this show up. We see handprints. These show up all over. But most of the research that I'm going to present is going to be from like the Eurasia area, like Northern Asia, Europe. That's where most of the excavating has been done, so we just have more information kind of about that area of the world. So we start seeing handprints a lot, and we see some really interesting things. If you look at a few of these, they're actually missing parts of their fingers. We don't know why. We don't know if that was like, if they were just tucking a finger under and making some kind of cool gang symbol, or if they're missing digits because of something. We also see ones like this with really elongated fingers for some reason too. We don't know why. Also, so there's a little bit of a difference between religion and spirituality. Religion is like a group that practice like they have an agreed upon symbology or ideology, a belief system, worldview, and so everybody kind of agrees on these same kind of things. Spirituality is more of like an individualistic journey to connect and communicate with the divine. So at first, we can only kind of assume whether something is spiritual or religious. We do find these. We find a lot of these. So was this part of some kind of religious expression? Maybe. We don't really know. We also get animals then start about 20,000 years ago, 25,000 years ago. We start getting really cool animal art. And we get a lot of it. And we get a lot of really interesting types of things. There's been a lot of debate about, there's multiple art forms like this, where it's one animal in like different positions. And we don't really know why. But it's really detailed, like it's really well done art. Like clearly, they had to practice and then do their this was the final piece they decided to put on the wall, and we don't really know why. It's been speculated that in a lot of these caves, the fire that they would have had in the cave, the way it lights the cave, the flickering kind of the light and the shadow would have made art like this look like it was moving. So potentially it could be something like that. You're in a dark space with this very specific lighting and this very specific artwork, and then it's almost like a hallucinogenic type of experience, right? Also, I fully encourage questions as we go. If you have questions about anything, please let me know. But we start seeing, so it's mainly like geographic, geoforms, lines, dots, and things, and then we kind of start seeing some handprints, and then for a long time it's just animals. It's just a bunch of different kinds of animals. We don't even see humans show up in cave art until like 15,000 years ago, and first they just show up as these little guys. Well, so the animal is displayed really big, and the humans are real tiny. So, and they think too that they might be dead. So, in the beginning, it seems like, oh yes, yeah.
How do you know how old the art is?
That's a really great question. You can carbon date the material, so anything that is like biological in nature that decays over time has a rate that it decays at. And so if biological matter was used like it would have been in these paints, we can date it and see how long it's been decaying for. So we can get like a rough idea, a pretty close idea of how old it is. Also with some of these things, you get different types of like crystals that will start growing over the ark that can also be dated. Did I hear somebody else have a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
About how long ago were the megafauna extincted?
That was in like the Younger Dryas period, so like 12-ish thousand years ago. Some of these, like there were still mammoths around like 10,000 years ago. So this megafauna, yeah, was going on for tens of thousands of years. So humans would have been seeing this a lot, all of these different kinds of animals. Yeah.
Just to jump back, why is there more excavation work done in the Europe area and not the Americas?
Probably racism.
Okay.
Honestly,
Okay.
because archaeology was a bunch of white European dudes that started it, and so that's where they wanted to focus, and that's still kind of where our focus is as a world. So,
Gotcha.
unfortunately, that's the case, probably. So, yes.
How is all this possible if the world is only 6,000 years old?
We'll magic. We'll come to that. Okay, so what we infer from this, where for like 20,000 years we see mostly like animal art, and it gets really good, it really, intense, it might be moving, it might be, so what that kind of signals to us is, okay, in the ancient world, this was the kinds of things they were really paying attention to, they're really observing it, they're really getting to know it, like they're not worrying about painting humans, they're painting animals. And probably before that, if they could figure out a way, this might be what some of the geographic lines and dots represent, the elements of the earth, wind, rain, storming. Because when we look at like primitive societies now, that's generally how a lot of their belief system works. Is it's around like earth elements, the rain itself, the waters, fire, air, stuff like that. But was probably pretty hard to depict in rock art. So probably it started as like elemental earth worship of these forces that would show up. If a big storm shows up and you're just a tribe in the savannah, that could be really good for you or devastating and kill you. So, and animals also, they're a source of food and nutrition. You can make clothes, you can make tools from them. And they're just an incredible, like, in this one especially, I see so much like awe in animals in this. Like this is clearly someone who has really studied them from different angles. Like, so this is not just like observation, but it feels like awe and respect and honoring, as well as kind of trying to understand the animals, understand the world around you. So this is kind of the first stuff we get of humans are little stick figures. We didn't put a lot of emphasis on humans. Humans didn't seem to be that important to the very ancient humans. It was much more animals and elements and things. So when we do get humans showing up,
How big is that?
not very big. Most of the rock arts are like relatively small,
Is
probably
it
like,
a fingerprint? Is it that small?
not that small, no, yeah.
They're not big.
Yeah, but they're not big. Most rock art is not super big. Some of them in some places get kind of big, but not like a whole panel on a wall. Unfortunately, that would be really cool. So when we start seeing humans showing up in art, it's about 45,000 years ago, and it's these figures, the Venus figures. And we find them, and we find them, and we find them. There are so many of them. This is one of the most common ancient artifacts that we find in this Eurasia area that is this old. There's very few artifacts we have that are, 20 to 40,000 years old. So, what this seems to say is that this is I think the closest to like an organized religion as we come originally, is this kind of worship, this Venus worship. Most of them are like kind of a pregnant looking lady. So what we think this is probably a anthropomorphization, which is where you take something and you give it human attributes of the world itself. So she's probably the earth itself, and she's pregnant because the earth gives us everything we need. The food, the water, the shelter, everything we need. She is abundant, she supplies, she gives us everything. And so this was probably the first closest thing to religion that we would recognize, where through a big area of space, a lot of people have the same imagery, the same kind of belief system, putting the same importance kind of in the same areas. So this is probably it, which then also supports the idea that humans worship the world like around them. So observing the earth herself as being giving, providing water, providing food, providing everything that you need. And so we start visualizing her in a human form. So we start kind of attributing human characteristics to elements, to nature, to divine aspects. So we start putting ourselves onto them. Yes?
They said they started to worship. I think heard this before. Is it we're trying to worship or trying to explain? Because humans want to know and give a reason for everything. Like, why did he or she say that to me? We make up stories that may or may not be true.
Exactly.
So did the worship coming first, or did they trying to explain, or we don't know?
Yeah, we don't know. I think it's both. I think originally a lot of it was humans have always been very observational creatures, and we in this form as Homo sapiens sapien have been this way, the same body, the same brain, everything for at least 300,000 years. There are arguments that we are up to 1 million years old. And so we've had our same brains, our same ways of thinking and putting things together. I lost my train of thought. Say your question again.
Yeah, what came first? Was it to try to explain the surroundings,
yes.
or did the worship come
Observation
first?
or the worship? Yeah, I think it happens simultaneously, where we're watching the world around us. I mean, even just like sitting out in nature, you climb up to the top of a mountain and you're by yourself, and you see things from a different perspective, where you're seeing kind of the sun moving, or you might see the stars a little differently, and also you feel a sense of like awe and wonder and power in nature. So I think it was both. Where it's observing, the massive heaviness of a rainstorm is incredible. The energy involved there is exceptionally huge. So I think it's observing and worshiping kind of at the same time. And worship, the way we think of worship now, I don't think has been the way for most of history. It was just kind of a recognition of something bigger than me, something more powerful than me. Yeah, and respect and honor. And wanting to show gratitude. Like, the world is beautiful and it doesn't have to be, but it is, and that's an amazing thing that the gods would have given us. So I think they happened simultaneously. It was also largely a way to understand the world around them. So I'm going to kind of come back to that in a minute. But yeah, so we just find tons of these Venus statues all over the place. Something else, this is just a little aside. Rocks were really important in the ancient world, and we don't really know why. This is this giant green stone found in the center of a temple in Hattusha in Turkey. It was clearly had a very ceremonial role, but we don't really know. So physical objects representing deities or spirituality has also been a big thing. This is a big thing for people who are Islamic. This is Mecca, in Mecca, where that's your pilgrimage that you make as a Muslim, is you go to Mecca and you get in this, so it's got all of this area here. This is usually filled with people. You come into this area, you start on the outside, and you kind of circle around and you spiral in closer to this giant box. This is the holiest place in all of Islam. And down here, if you look at this, I'm going to do a zoom in here, that is a little opening that you can stick your head in and look to what's in this box. The most sacred item in this box. It's a rock. It's black rock. It's been sacred in Islam for a long time, and we don't really kind of know why. So that happens a lot too, where rocks are kind of made special in some kind of way. And then we move to, this is a funny one. These are called herms, where it's mostly rough stone, and then it'll end up with a face. This one's fun because it's just a stone with a face and a little wiener. So these kinds of statues kind of started first, where it was rock and then parts of humans coming off of them. And then we start seeing kind of human-animal hybrids show up. So we see first animals in art, and then this kind of Venus, this really exaggerated kind of human form, and then human forms mixed with animals. So it kind of seems to be a progression from observing and worshiping the outside world and elements and nature and forces, and then it starts kind of bleeding into humanity. We start making connections of maybe this person was trying to embody the power of the stag, and so it's like pulling animalistic or natural energy into a human form to try to kind of embrace that in yourself or feel that in yourself. Because we see the progression of just human thought and human consciousness throughout this journey as well. Where at first it's everything external. You're looking at the world inside, almost like, or outside, like a child, where you're paying attention to everything around you. And then the older you get, the more you start paying attention to your inner world and what's going on inside. So that, I think, is kind of what happens here, is we see the external world, and then we also start seeing parts of that in ourselves. And so we start incorporating things like this into our imagery. This is a really cool one. This shamanistic dude with like mushrooms coming out all over him, and then this bee as a head. Yeah, so we see a lot of really cool, interesting human-animal kind of mixtures. This shamanistic kind of idea. There's also ideas that some of these types of like shamanistic humanoids presented are actually representations like after people went on like a psychedelic journey and they came back and they're like, dude, I don't know how to explain what I saw on the drop. So it could be that. This is also potentially the dawning of like shamanism and doing more internal work, whether you're using external substances to get to that place or meditation to get to that place. But it's kind of like we start mixing in ourselves with the divine. And then, of course, this ends up in pantheons like this. This is Egyptian. And a lot of them end up with animal heads. Which is, these deity characters in their personality have traits of these specific animals. And so that's kind of why they're presented with that animal head. They embody some of those traits. And then it goes from this into pretty much like fully human deities. We're all pretty familiar with probably like Greek and Roman mythology. You just got fully human deities with personalities and things of their own. So it's kind of like we start imagining God in our form, like in human form. So God goes from being kind of nature and elements and things we can't really understand into like more of a human form that we feel like we can understand. Through that, it appears to be that we're observing the world around us and making up stories kind of around it and giving those elements characteristics. Eventually the wind itself becomes a deity. The sun itself becomes a deity. These different forces, external forces in the world become a deity. Astrology was really important in the ancient world. We've been watching the stars. Like this is one of the wildest things because the world that we live in today is so different from how it was for hundreds of thousands of years, where the night sky was really important. And everyone was very versed in astronomy, the movements of the stars, the movements of the moon. That's how they kept time. And so it is trying to understand the world around them. They also notice that some of the stars they look at stay in a position, a fixed star. Some are movable stars that seem to move around the sky, and those are our planets and other astral bodies in our solar system. So they see these things that move, and they seem to move in kind of regular patterns, which takes tens of thousands of years to observe the larger movements of these planets. So we've been watching the night sky for tens of thousands of years at least. Because also originally, those stars were deities, especially the planets, the movable ones. Those, like, the reason that we call Jupiter isn't like in honor of ancient Greece, it's because that's what they called it. And the people before them, and the people before them. It had been referred to as this deity. There was not a separation between that object in the sky itself and the deity. Jupiter was Zeus. That was the god. Was this moving star. And a lot of the stories that we get around a lot of these deities are actually kind of mnemonic devices to remember how the world works, how the stars move. Just a few years ago, we had a conjunction of, it was Jupiter and I want to say Saturn. It's either Saturn or Uranus. And you see them in the sky, and they kind of, Uranus comes from above, Jupiter comes from below, and they kind of meet in the sky, and then Uranus falls and Jupiter rises, and that's the story of Jupiter killing his own father and taking over the Greek pantheon. And so that's actually the movements of these stars, and so we turn them into stories to say like, oh, now we're in the age of Jupiter, because Jupiter is now above Uranus, and So so a lot of it was just trying to literally understand the world around them, not really understanding what the moving things in the sky were, but understanding that they seemed to have patterns, they seemed to have personalities, they seemed to kind of portray certain aspects of them, and so then that, becomes anthropomorphized into a human form. We take kind of the natural, worshiping the natural world, and then we kind of wrap it up in with humans. And so you see these kinds of pantheons they can get very delineated, like a ton of little tiny deities over every little thing. But a lot of it actually ties back. Anyway, it's essentially humans being like, oh, if we break this apart, then it turns into this, and so now this is its own thing. If we break this apart, it turns into something else. Now it's its own thing. Yeah.
What was the first record of writing?
Writing, cuneiform in the Middle East, about 6,000 years ago. Yeah. Although there's speculation that the lines and dots and geometric things in cave art is actually a form of communication. There's a guy working on it right now trying to figure it out, and he's got some really interesting findings. Anyway, so it seems to be that religion starts from observation of the world around you, trying to understand the world around you, as well as wanting to respect and honor and love and show gratitude towards the world around you. So that kind of seems where it originated, and then we took this really weird route to get to where we are now with Christian monotheism, where it's super different. Our belief systems now are so different than they were in the ancient world. Gods in the ancient world also were not really like how we imagine God now as this kind of benevolent father figure. They were just higher beings that had more powers than us, and sometimes they interacted with us, sometimes not. They didn't really care about humans, was the most part. They didn't care about punishment or reward. There wasn't really a heaven or hell idea. They've got their own personalities, and they're just kind of doing their thing. So it was also like, okay, so this, the sun is really hot, so we're having a day where Ra is angry. And so it was kind of how you explain, like, well, I don't know what's going on, but the sun is really hot today, and so he must be angry, that's what's going on. We start seeing other deities also in the journey of human evolution and going into our internal worlds, where emotions and passions and things get deified. Aphrodite is the goddess of love and beauty and those things. Those aren't necessarily external things, but internal things. Yeah.
Is there any type of what's the word I'm looking for? Well, a point in time where God started to require sacrifices, like human sacrifices or animal sacrifices or the first of the flock. So that's all pretty recent.
Very recent.
That the God started to want to gimme.
Yeah, where that wasn't a thing for a long time. It was just kind of
And any reason why, or is it just I guess the ideas of man, power?
I think it was a form of people taking control of a belief system in order to get power and control socioeconomically, and so I think it was involved in that. I would love to do a whole one about kind of the evolution of Christianity and how we went from polytheism into monotheism and how much it's changed. So we see gods of external forces and gods of internal forces. So trying to understand ourselves. The spirit of Dionysus overcame me. I just didn't get drunk and violent because it was Dionysus energy moving through me, and that was what happened. So a lot of that was kind of viewing our own internal experience as something external moving through us. Like, I'm feeling Aphrodite right now, I'm feeling Dionysus right now, I'm feeling Apollo right now, like you're feeling those types of things, and that's kind of an explanation for it, that this specific energy is in me right now. There are still languages now that kind of use that. I think it's Irish, that instead of saying I am sad, the way they phrase it is sadness is upon me, where it's not like you are the thing, it's you're just experiencing the thing. And so that was kind of these early days too, you're experiencing this passion, and by anthropomorphizing it into a human and giving it all of these attributes, that helps you understand your internal experience better by externalizing it into something else. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much it. That's all the early origins. Do we have any other questions? Yes.
So it seems like a lot of it is still just speculation. You're looking at things, you're trying to figure it out, but you still don't really know. It's just, this could be why, but we don't know for sure.
Exactly, yeah. And even in the writings and what people write about their own religions at these times are really hard for us to decipher, because they're speaking kind of in a slang that we don't really understand, and they all know what it means, but we don't really know what it means. And so trying to interpret ancient religions is really difficult in a lot of ways because the language is just so different now. Yeah.
Is there a record of when they started using like God's names to curse and do those sorts of things?
That's also a little more recently. That's probably 5,000 years ago. Because originally also when you would kind of pray to a deity, it was just kind of acknowledging like, look at all these great and amazing things you do and all these wonderful stuff, and I'm so grateful for this existence and this is amazing. And then eventually we see it kind of get to the point where people start asking for things. Instead of just acknowledging and appreciating what's going on, they're kind of like, and also give me a good prop. And also maybe give me this other good thing. And also, you know, Johnny falls down and breaks his leg. So yeah, but like originally it wasn't like, it was like humans were like, no, I can't ask
You can't ask.
for anything. I just have to acknowledge and appreciate, and yeah.
Do we see like so much of the emphasis on these kind of religions seems to be kind of a linear aspect from like, say like you said, you know, Africa to the Middle East to Europe. But when you talk about like Hinduism, Buddhism, and like these really, really ancient religions of like more the Eastern religions, do they kind of go, do they branch off? Do they have like a separate kind of origin, or like we don't talk too much about that?
Yeah, like especially with things like Buddhism and Hinduism, where they were started by a person. Or not Hinduism, but like Buddhism and Taoism. So they're kind of, yeah, like it's kind of started by a person who's like, this is the information I've received, here you go, here's what I know. And then other people kind of jumped on board with that so that it kind of becomes a religion.
But Hinduism is really, really old.
Hinduism is insanely old.
Yeah.
We don't even know how old Hinduism is. It's probably tens of thousands of years old, it could be. And so that seems to be like, originally people making observations, like you start with, a lot of times like deities will have like families, and like, so the ancient deities are generally elemental, and they have children who are these kind of more specified elements, and they have children who are these more specified elements, and so it just kind of grows. So with stuff like that, with really ancient religions with huge pantheons, yeah, we don't know exactly where it started from, we don't know exactly how it all got put together, why those stories sound the way they do. Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, you know, Egyptian kind of connects to Hinduism in any way.
Yeah, they all kind of feed into itself. So the oldest stuff we find is in like the Middle East, and that does kind of bleed out into the whole rest of the old world. There's a lot of, most pantheons all over the world have similar characteristics in their deities. They tell somewhat similar stories. You see similar deities show up in all these different pantheons, and that again supports the idea of observing the world around you. And so everybody in all these different areas are making the same observations and then creating deities to embody that, what they're observing. And so that's why we have a lot of commonalities amongst those. Yeah. But then, yeah, with Hinduism, it's just, I think when a religion gets so old, it just gets so complicated and kind of wild because people have been running with stories for a long time. So, yeah.
From an academic standpoint, is the book *Sapiens: Brief History of Mankind* liked, respected? I don't know if you read it or not.
I haven't read it yet. I've heard of it. I know people who really like it. Yeah, I don't know enough about
if
it.
the academic thinks that he's kind of cheapened the whole thing to kind of just get out to the masses. I really enjoyed it. I think what you're saying right here was a great explanation. So, okay, you haven't read it, that's all right.
Yeah. There's anthropology's been making a lot of steps forward lately. And some really cool stuff. Yeah.
This question isn't quite as deep, but you mentioned that the written word is like 6,000 years old. I'm just curious about numbers.
Oh, okay, for like most of this. So the oldest stuff that we start finding is like the cave art, that's like the lines and dots and things. It's about 65,000 years old. And then we start finding more detailed animal art and the Venus statues at about 45,000 years ago. We start seeing humans show up in cave art like 15,000 years ago. And then we really start seeing like what we think of as ancient religion take root about 4,000 years ago. But a couple thousand years even before that, Egypt was thriving, in Sumeria they were doing other things. Yeah, is that kind of what you meant?
I'm just, it's even dumber than that. Like when we started counting, recording things like that.
Oh, like when we started like time? Oh, like method itself. Oh, yeah. I mean, the first math stuff we have recorded, I think, is cuneiform, which is Sumerian, Middle Eastern. They had a really interesting system where they used a base 60 to do math. But they had incredibly complex ziggurats and buildings and things that would have required a lot of architecture and math and things. So they were using principles like 5000 BC that then didn't come back up until like Pythagoras in Greece a few thousand years later. They were already using a lot of that, and Egyptians too. Like, but we've lost a lot of how they did that. We still don't know how they built the pyramids. Like, so yeah. Did that kind of answer? Okay.
Of the little work that's been done in the Americas, are there a lot of parallels between what we're seeing in the Middle Eastern areas?
I mean, somewhat. As far as like what we've been able to figure out about the deities and things in the New World, there are a lot of shared similarities, like there are around the world for different elemental deities and things. They also did have some really interesting. They were really hardcore into human sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like they killed so many people all the time that it must have been a much bigger population than we assume it was for them to be killing tens of thousands of their own people every year. Insane amounts of people. So it must have been really heavily populated. But yeah, so little archaeology has really been done in the New World. If you go down even to Mexico, you can get up on some of the excavated towers that they have and go up to the top of the tower, and you can just see, just looking out over the forest, oh, there's a mound, there's a mound, there's a mound. Like they're all like just uncovered, like non-explored sites. And so yeah, we have very limited information.
Where do you get the number for like 10,000 people per sacrifice?
There are accounts that we have where they do kind of keep track of the amount of sacrifices they made. I mean, it's also because they would also like kind of put that on their buildings. Like they would make these sacrifices and they'd make a tower of skulls out of all their people, and then by that tower of skulls, it's like we killed this many people in this place. And so it could be some exaggeration to make them sound more powerful than they are. But with the amount of remains and things we found, what we do still know was a significant amount of people. And so the only way for them to be like killing that many people every year, their population would have had to have been higher, higher than we assumed it was. Yeah.
So in that example in particular, I know you said maybe like it was about power and stuff. Are you aware if they had like a belief in like they were genuinely calling on the power of God or getting God to do things in their favor, or that maybe that's how they get people on board to carry this out is through beliefs like that, or I don't know.
So there was in Mesoamerica, the human sacrifice was done largely. They believed in like cycles of time. That was like 2012, and we're gonna end the Mayan calendar. Like they believed in these big cycles of time, and essentially when those cycles shifted over, it's like destruction, apocalypse, end of the world kind of stuff. And that the only way they could prevent that and push that further out is by killing a bunch of people themselves instead. And so it was done in an effort to appease the god so they wouldn't restart the cycle and like destroy humanity essentially.
So that's like a fear element of like protect himself from destruction.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Was it relatively peaceful then that they were sacrificing their own people, or?
Sometimes that would happen where it's relatively peaceful and you sacrifice your own people. Ideally though, you wouldn't be sacrificing your own people. You would have taken captives and you'd have people to sacrifice from other areas, yeah. But sometimes they would sacrifice themselves. They did weird blood sacrifices from themselves anyway. Like, they were hardcore, man. Yeah.
Don't mess with them.
Do not. They were wild, yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Will you come back and do another one?
Yeah.